Welcome back to the Gun Show, my friends. Thank you for being here. If you have plugged into your Google search, I want to learn about muscles or I want to learn about weapons, and gun comes up, the Gun Show comes up, we talk about manufacturing. So please stay. We love you. We want you to stay. But this show is about manufacturing. We're humanizing manufacturing. I have a very special guest with me today who I'll introduce in just a minute, and a very special topic today in manufacturing, which I think is quite profound. It's the history of manufacturing. And so many of you are going to get to learn some cool details that I've had the pleasure of visiting once or twice in my life. But we're trying to make this voice louder, more profound, spread a spotlight, awareness, everything that comes along with something that was kept, I would say, it's not meant to be a secret, but it's kind of been secretive, and we want to do more with it. So got some friends with me today. But before we get to that, MTDCNC, this is the power behind the Gun Show. So thank you for producing this show. And we have to thank our sponsors, AMT, IMTS. We love you guys. You're amazing. eButter Growth Systems, thank you for everything you're doing as well. Shop Floor Coffee, we love your coffee. Keeping us caffeinated and ready to dance. Wait, dance? Maybe. I don't know. Christian, do I dance much? No, not on the show, but I am going to start dancing. So yeah, don't run away. And the American Precision Museum, a new sponsor of ours. And there might be a reason why I've paused right here today, as something new is coming. So we're going to play a couple of games at the end of the show. I hope Christian has us set up for sound effects today. And we're also going to do rapid fire, which is fun because we really never really know what the answer is going to be. We just get to how do we say? Well, we just guess sometimes. Sometimes, I didn't mean to say that. I didn't mean to say that, but that's what rapid fire does. So please welcome the world famous Jerry Rex today. Jerry, thank you so much for being here, my friend. Welcome back to the Gun Show, my friends. This is the VIP edition.
Hey, Tony, thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. First things first, you get this shirt of the Gun Show. You are officially a part of the team, my friend.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And second thing is we have to do a toast. You know, I got to hang out with you in Vermont. For those of us watching on YouTube right now, we'll try to describe vividly for those of you on Spotify, Apple, and Google. For those of you watching on YouTube right now, you may notice a video running behind us. This is the American Precision Museum. This is where I got to catch up with Jerry. But let's do a toast, Jerry. I'm very grateful that you've flown into town to spend time with me today. We are sipping some Clase Azul tequila. Any toast for us?
Well, here's to those that have given their lives to manufacturing, those that know nothing about it, and those that are going to find out more through the American Precision Museum and the Gun Show.
Oh, I love it, brother.
Cheers.
Great toast. And we'll just go ahead and make a noise.
Wow. A tequila that needs no lime, lemon, or salt.
No training wheels required.
Mm-mm.
All right, so let's just jump right into what's happening behind us right now. Christian, if you don't mind, let's keep this wide view for a little bit because it's worth discussing. And we can switch back and forth, of course, because Jerry's a handsome young man. We can keep it off of me for the most part. But we have this video rolling right now. This is one of your colleagues. I got to spend time. The whole purpose of what we created is because, to be fair, and to be honest and transparent, the museum, although a beautiful location, is somewhat not easy to get to for a lot of the people in the country, right?
Right.
So we came together and we created this video, which can be found on YouTube. So let's talk about the American Precision Museum and how you got involved.
Okay. And, I love what you said in one of the clips for the LinkedIn post where you said it's an hour and a half from the nearest airport, which is a fact because I've tried 3 different airports. So I'm not trying to, discourage people or disincent them from making the effort.
Because they should. In person is the best.
It is absolutely worth being there in person to see this brook where that building was intentionally built alongside of that so that the machines could be powered by water. But my involvement, it's been almost 2 years now. And I first got involved because it felt like the right thing to do, an opportunity to give back to the industry that's been really good to me. But the more involved I got, spending time there with the staff and seeing what is happening not only between those walls and within the walls, but also the outreach and how we are trying to make a difference with young people. And specifically, we can get into this later, underserved communities of young people. The things that are happening there, I just had to be a part of that because I've got too much energy and I'm done with trying to have corporate roles and all that, but I really want to continue to be involved and engaged and relevant. And the museum gives me a chance to do that because it's so much more than history, and it's a lot about our industry's future.
You know, you and I have spent a lot of time in manufacturing. You and I have seen quite a few things, from machines that are, maybe 50 to 75 years old, still being utilized in some shops, to some of the latest and greatest and newest as we pop over to places like IMTS and bumping into you at East Tech and some of these other places, right? But I can honestly say, and I think you'd probably agree with me, when I was able to stumble through this, and there's our buddy Steve right there, when I was able to stumble through this place, I saw so many things that I was like, what in the heck does this do?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and when you think about 1846 and 1850, when these machines were designed and built, and the engineering minds that it took to do that, but the difference it made in our world, the entire world, not just the U.S., because of those efforts, it's pretty fascinating.
Let's talk about a couple of those dates you just mentioned, by the way, because I by no means, and Steve is probably the guy we should call down here to South Florida at some point to come on a podcast, right?
Yeah.
But I know you know some of it as well. Around 1846, something pretty profound happened. I've actually heard the name Silicon Valley, the original Silicon Valley of the U.S., or at least for manufacturing. What happened around that time?
Well, it's kind of interesting. No buildings existed. There was not a company that existed, but there were a couple men right there, Lawrence and Kendall, what timing? You guys are incredible. That really had an opportunity to present a proposal to the U.S. government for 10,000 rifles. One of the criteria for that order, for it to be placed, was these parts for the firearms needed to be interchangeable. You think about the timing. The French and Indian Wars had just ended. The War of 1812 had just ended. You can't have gunsmiths running around on the battlefield trying to repair, and these weapons were piling up as they got broken or whatever.
Sounds terrible.
So they had to be able to interchange the parts, but they were handcrafted mostly and put together, and so it took fitting to assemble them, just not practical. So these guys came up with Mr. Robbins, Samuel Robbins, who had gotten fairly wealthy in logging and other interests in New England. He funded them. He goes, you get the order, I'll fund you guys. And so they built buildings, the main one that is now the museum, along the stream, and this huge 18-foot diameter water wheel and all of that. And they came up with these, and they came in on time and under budget for these 10,000 rifles. And that started the ball rolling.
Jerry, something that you brought up a couple of times just now, and it gets my wheels turning in my head, is when we think about how things were made a couple hundred years ago, or even before that, we think about how things are made now, I am in awe of the quality that was able to be accomplished. Now, I think the major differences between then and now, or previous to that and now, is the time, right? Like, time is a valuable, valuable essence, and maybe something took, hours to a day to weeks to even months to get something done that we could maybe do a little bit quicker now. But walking through this facility, you mentioned two things, so I'm circling back to that, is the water wheel. And when I look throughout this building, is it 4 floors?
Yes.
4 floors. And you have the first one completely ready for people to look at while you're trying to turn the second one into an education area, right? But the first one's ready to go. 4 floors total of all sorts of cool engineering. And we see, on this video right here, Christian, would you mind switching to the full screen for me for the YouTubers out there looking at this thing? So I saw a lot of this. I saw a ton of pulley systems, and the entire building is set up with pulley systems which connect to that water wheel, right?
That's right. One of the few places you'll see an example that might be better than that is the Henry Ford Museum. There are a couple other shops, one outside of Meadville, PA, and one I've heard in South Carolina. But there are line shafts with pulleys, and there are these belts, and if you can imagine, one water wheel driving all of the machine tools in that entire building off of those line shafts through belt and pulley. And what Steve was doing there with Tony was showing a hand crank how that actually worked for some of the people that haven't seen that. Now, when I started in manufacturing, things weren't quite that ancient, but I've seen a lot of advances.
You haven't been around that long, right?
No.
Everyone in the industry knows you, but you haven't been around that long.
Not quite.
What happens if there's a drought?
Oh, that could be a problem. But they actually, It's a kind of unique design that you'd learn more coming to the museum, and Steve, our executive director, could tell you a lot about that. But they channeled some of the water from that brook, and so that it also came down below. Most water wheels are powered with the water coming over the top and pushing it down. This was coming under, so you could get away with less of a flow, but this was one that between the water coming off the mountains and the other things up there, it was natural, and it always has some flow, thankfully.
So drought wasn't an issue, I guess.
And in times when there were troubles, they had certain stations with those hand cranks, and they would just get some youngster that they would pay to do that on critical machines.
That probably would have been me. The youngster just working away on the crank.
There you go.
So when we were walking through this facility as well, and for it playing in the background, we're only just at the beginning with Steve, and Steve is so well educated on everything that goes on in this facility. But later on, we catch up with a few other folks, including yourself, which those who are following us on YouTube right now will get to see all of this. And then later on, you can go to YouTube and see this full video on your own. You actually take it from the beginning of what we've just described, and we do a little walkthrough. And one of your favorite areas is the invention of some of the, not newer products, but newer to where we're sitting right now in the 1840s, 1850s, right?
Yep.
Would you mind describing that transition and why that fascinates you so much?
I guess what piqued my interest about that, Tony, is the idea that the average person couldn't even afford a bicycle. At that time, there was like 1 in 50 homes that even had a clock, right? And so the idea that this wasn't about firearms, this wasn't about war or guns, it was about interchangeable parts and precision manufacturing, because Steve has said it, if you take a 1/2-inch shaft, you can fit it in a 1-inch hole, but it's going to be sloppy, it's not going to be functional.
Right.
So being able to make parts with enough precision that they are interchangeable and still very functional, it changed everything. Typewriters, bicycles, sewing machines all became affordable to the middle class, and that changed the world globally forever. And
Yeah.
it's continued to go. And you mentioned it before. Some of the things aren't done that much differently, but they're done maybe with more precision and even more speed because of how we can produce them now. Most of it, though, is just an improvement on something that somebody else came up with a long time ago.
That's a really good way to put it, because that's, I mean, I even heard the thought that there's no such thing as an original idea. Have you ever heard that before?
Yeah.
We're all just building off of somebody else's thought.
I thought that was my idea.
The original one?
Yeah.
The original, like KFC's chicken, the original recipe?
No, I have heard that, and I think it's, like music, songs. How many chords are there? How many notes? There aren't that many notes, right? It's just how you put them together, and that's what started all of this.
But I can play those notes better, faster. No, I'm just kidding. I can't play any instruments. It's a failed hip-hop career in my case. All right, so what I want to talk about a little bit, Jerry, if it's okay with you, is I believe the people we're speaking to in manufacturing would all love to be here. I think everyone that's already in manufacturing would love to see this. We both highly recommend it. That's why we created this video. But what about the people outside of manufacturing? What kind of interest do they have in walking around? Because when we were there that day, there was a schoolyard of kids, about 30, 40 kids, I think, that were walking through that building that had no idea really about manufacturing, and they looked really interested that day.
Right. And I like to say it a couple of different ways. One thing that I've said for years is if it's not born, hatched, or grown, and a good friend input or mind, because things come out of the ground too, right? Then it must be made, and made is manufacturing. That's all manufacturing is. It's making things, right? So the people on cell phones, they don't realize that shell is machined. Some of them out of very expensive, lightweight titanium and other materials, some aluminum, some are forged or made out of plastic, formed. But everything is made if it wasn't born, hatched, grown, or mined. And the other piece is people have this idea that manufacturing is either dirty or smelly or whatever, but they don't maybe realize that we need accountants, we need financial people, we need HR and IT and IS and all these other roles, and sales and measurement. And now we have 3D printing, and we have examples of that, and robotics at the museum. So we're not trying to only highlight the history, but I think there are lessons that can be learned from seeing history. And what I'd like to share with young people is the idea that these people were innovators. You have a chance to be an innovator and maybe come up with a better way to create something, to come up with a design of a knee or a joint replacement that's less painful to put in, that's faster, whatever it is, because you're 15 years or 20 behind me in that, but some of us are going to need that stuff sooner rather than later. So I just think there are opportunities that exist that people aren't even aware of, and we can't blame educators and parents because they don't know. So those of us that are in the industry, it's incumbent on us to try and help people be aware. And so that's why I'm passionate about it, and I'm a living example that you can work your way through that. Even if you aren't sure what you want to do in the end, it can come clearer as you maneuver your way through the different opportunities that present themselves, because trust me, they're there.
Yeah, I'm going to present a story to you, Jerry, and I hope I present it well enough for the audience out there to join me along this journey. And it's my personal journey, but we both know where you and I sit right now, advocates for manufacturing and loving it. But I'm going to present to you a childhood person, a teenage person, that not only didn't know about manufacturing or didn't care about manufacturing, but I'm going to go back to the part where I didn't know about manufacturing. And I say that because I cared about sports. I was listening to music. I was looking to see which girlfriend I was going to have. Like, I didn't care how my textbooks were being printed. I didn't care how my lockers were made. I didn't care about a little bit about my car. I wanted my speaker system to sound good, right? Yep. Maybe I wanted my tent to look cool, that kind of thing, right? But as a general rule, I never once thought about working in an industry that made things like this. And don't get me wrong, there's some tinkerers out there that is second nature, that they already know that they're going to be making something at one point in their life. There's a lot of folks out there whose parents are in manufacturing, so they're aware. But there's a large group of folks, especially because we outsource so much over our last, say, generation or last 30, 40 years, that just don't think about it. And I would include myself in that as a 10-year-old to when I found manufacturing about 20 years old, from about 10 to 20, where it's just not a thought. How do we make this more fun and exciting and enjoyable and a career path? Because my guidance counselor told me, you need to go to university or you're not going to be anything in life. You may as well get your GED and get out of here with your good enough diploma. But the ROI currently on manufacturing, on engineering, on trades is actually higher over a career span until retirement than the majority of university jobs. So how do we make this more fun and create more awareness?
I did research for my next opportunity because I wanted to write a book. And I came across this statistic that 70% of small business owners want to fund their retirement through the sale of their business, when in fact only 20% of them actually had a saleable business. And it broke my heart anticipating the fact that baby boomers, there was a light at the end of the tunnel, and in fact it was a train. And so I really wanted to do something about that. So I wrote a book called Scaling the Exit. The purpose of the book was to articulate a strategy for small to medium-sized business owners to increase the value of their business to the extent that they could actually sell it and fund their retirement. And that was really the first iteration of what became EBITDA Growth Systems and our brand promise, which is to double the valuation of small, medium-sized businesses, specifically in terms of an exit, but double their valuation or we give them their money back.
Well, I think that's two different pieces, and it's more difficult to make it fun than it is to provide information on the opportunity, I think. And it's frustrating because if somebody's trying to promote trades, all you see is a welding helmet and gloves and plumbers and stuff, and there's nothing against those people. Those roles are important and they pay very well, but it goes so much beyond that. And I remember I didn't want to get into manufacturing. I told my dad, I don't want to run a machine all my life. He said, that's why you want to get in this apprentice program. And now I look at running the machines. It's so much different than it was when I got into it. And it's really exciting, some of the stuff. But you don't even have to see a machine and still be involved in manufacturing in a lot of different ways. So The conundrum is, how do we get the exposure? I think Manufacturing Day is a start, bringing people into the various shops, especially medical and aerospace and high-end job shops and other places, so they can see what's happening. Because you look at the number of young and middle-aged people that are playing role-playing games. They spend hours accumulating these different weapons and tools and other things. Well, how about you spend a few hours redesigning and making a better braking system or whatever it happens to be, and then you can lay your hands on some of these things when they're done at the end of the day, or 3D print a part that goes in a couple of hours instead of taking weeks to do a model out of wood and then test it and do all these other things. So I think to try and make it fun, some of the stuff we're doing is starting with 4th, 5th, and 6th graders with these STEM kits, and we've developed this program called STEM Plus M Pathways. And the plus M is plus manufacturing. So you've got your typical STEM with science, technology, education, engineering, and math, and then you add manufacturing. We're trying to show how that ties into career opportunities in manufacturing. And the idea of maybe spending a year and a half or 2 years or getting on the job training while you're getting paid instead of having six-figure debt to repay and hope to get a job, whether it's in liberal arts or something else. The math is pretty simple, but people don't know it because we haven't had a chance or they haven't been exposed to it.
Well, I was going to say first things first, based on that conversation, but we're like halfway through our conversation already. So middle times middle, I don't know. First things first, middle, I don't. Anyway, you got The Mandalorian and Darth Vader right behind you, and you just said, let's continue to make things better and fun. Do you think you can make me a lightsaber?
Oh, I know people that could.
Do you?
Yeah.
Can we make that a real thing?
Complete with noise and everything, you know?
And actually be able to crash a few times without breaking it? Because I keep breaking mine.
Yeah, that's the problem.
You know,
making it light enough but yet sturdy enough.
Disney, we're only like 3 hours south of Disney right now. I keep buying them and breaking them. I'm sword fighting everyone. Plus with this Thor hammer. Where's my Thor hammer, Christian? Oh, it's not here today, but my Thor hammer that came from Heimbuch, that is legit heavy. Like, you could hurt someone with that thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I bring that up because it can kind of be fun, right? It can kind of be just a good time. I mean, take a look at this thing, Jerry. I mean, this is, I feel that. You can
look at that.
Legit hurt someone.
America, you could. And it won't break.
So I bring that up because we want to have fun, right? We want to tempt these kids. We want them to explore, and STEM is a great way to do it, right? And even the Precision Museum, you guys are doing a wonderful job there. And I just wonder, what's the best route? Do we do it ourselves? Is it government funding? How do we really spend time, and how do we work with the schools to get the schools to make field trips to factories? My field trips, and I loved my field trips, don't get me wrong, for everyone who's listening and watching right now, I lived in Richmond, Virginia growing up, so we went to places like DC, and we got to see all the different types of artistic works and Smithsonians and spy museums, and I got to go to Jamestown even, like that's the original town in the U.S., right? I think the Boston folks in Plymouth Rock. I saw that rock, by the way. It's just a rock. It's just a rock. I was a little sad about that, but it's still a cool piece of history. But it's just a rock. Anyway, I got to go to Jamestown and Williamsburg and all these really fun places. Never, ever, ever did any of my teachers bring up, let's go see a manufacturing facility. How do we get the schools to get involved like that?
That's a great question, and it's funny, there's the background if you go to full screen, the Crystal Palace exhibition, and we have recently found out the booth number and everything that we had for the USA, and that
this was in England, right?
In London, England, and they actually laid parts out for a number of weapons and firearms and said, here, take any of these components and put them together and you can assemble those units, and that's what blew them away. Mm-hmm. But I think the STEM kits, bringing kids in for school field trips. We just recently had a Lego First League competition there this past week, and there were multiple, I think 20-some students that came. I think raising the awareness, though, for the parents and the educators so that they truly understand what's going on and what these possibilities are, that they're truly endless. And there's going to be 2.5 million job openings between now and 2030 in our industry. So it's not stable. So I think that's a part of it. But I think you and I talked a little bit about this, and I think the best way to do this is for all of us to collectively figure out how we can take the power behind an AMT and an SME and a Gardner and a Gross Publications and NIMS and all these other sources that exist, and let's gather everybody together and come up with some kind of program. There are people out there like Jeremy Bout and Edge Factor and others that really trumpet what's happening here, but it's mostly preaching to the choir and singing to the congregation. We need to get the word out further about what's happening and what the reality of it is, and how people can not only survive but thrive. And there are some lucrative positions and opportunities within manufacturing.
I'm going to share a super quick story of my own, just based on not just survive, but thrive. And then I'm going to have a follow-up question about the school system and how to get people out versus bringing technology in, right? So I'm giving you just a little heads up about that next question. But I, growing up, had, for those who don't know out there, I had very little. We're talking food stamps, we're talking secondary clothes, we're talking Goodwill. You know, Christmas was whatever my grandparents got me, that kind of stuff, right? I didn't take my very first flight until I was 26 years old, and that was to Louisiana. My first international flight was when I met my now wife, and that was when I was even a little bit older, and that was down to Mexico. Currently, at my age, I have around 2 million flight miles. I have about 80 countries visited, and I can owe that all, not all, most, to manufacturing. Like, manufacturing opens so many doorways. And when people think of manufacturing, much like we've already discussed, we sometimes think of the dull, dirty, dangerous, sloppy floors, all that. You know, sometimes people with mangled hands, because I've actually seen somebody chop off their finger with a bandsaw. It was not a great day in my life. You can't block your mind's eye out from that. No. That's there forever. But it is stereotypically this way, and I would make the discussion that you have seen much of this in your life as well as the growth. You and I don't believe either one of us have a degree, but yet the industry welcomes people who are hard workers with good minds, who are creative and want to make something better, right? And I think both of us have done that. So shout out to manufacturing for my own career, for my own growth. I know you're going to elaborate on that, but I also want to. I don't want to lose the question that I want to ask you after that, because I want you to elaborate, which is, do you think it's easier to take field trips out to manufacturing facilities, or is it easier to bring technology in, or is it into the high schools, or is it a combination of both? So firstly, I want you to also describe a little bit of your process and what manufacturing has brought to your life, and then I'll re-ask the question I just asked. I just didn't want to forget it later. And Christian, you can remind me if I forget about, is it easier to go outside to learn about manufacturing, or bring it inside, or a combination of both? But tell us a little bit about your story, Jerry.
Okay. I thought that was just a test to see if I'd remember what the other question was. He was trying to distract me.
We're just trying to have a little fun here today, you know?
I had all kinds of different thoughts running through my head, and you shared earlier about the things that go through teenage boys' minds, and cars and women and that kind of stuff was clearly up there.
Sports, music, and girls, buddy.
And so, I wanted to be a broadcaster.
And you'd have been great at that.
My dad said, listen, he was working at General Electric, GE, and he said, you need to look at this apprentice program. It's a machinist apprentice program. And I applied for it, and then I went to Columbia School of Broadcasting, did the on-air test, did the written test and everything, and they wanted me to sign up. And I remember Ralph Weethorn and his deep voice and all this other stuff. They had me do on-air test, and I wanted to do it. Dad said, wait and see if you get accepted, because it's really hard to get in. That day, when we got back from Pittsburgh, that acceptance letter from Sam Gintz was in the mail. And I was pretty excited, and because I was getting paid, it was only $4.55 and a half an hour at the time, 40 hours a week. And then he went to school 4 nights a week, and different courses in strength of materials and hydraulics and physics and all the other things. But the point is, and I digressed a little too much probably, but the point is that when you get into manufacturing and then you see what all of the different avenues are, and it's changed, because when I got started, there were still punch cards, and then it was paper tape, and then it became Mylar, and I was excited because the guys on the floor didn't have to come to me and say I ripped the tape loading it. Now it's all, USB, or just download it from the cloud or from the server and let it rip. It's just fascinating how things continue to improve and develop and evolve. And, you mentioned that. So a guy without a college degree winds up having visited by the end of October, it'll be 43 countries. I've been to all 50 states. Most of that, if manufacturing didn't take me there for the job, manufacturing paid for my wife and I to go to those places. So it's been pretty phenomenal. But the number of people that I've gotten to meet, the friends that I've made, the cultures and languages and experiences that I've been exposed to all due to manufacturing, because none of that would have happened in the same way. And I am a firm believer, as we talked a couple of times, that things do happen for a reason. But I also believe that, like Thomas Jefferson said, you can create your own luck. But it takes work and it takes effort and focus. But in manufacturing, you can rise to the top if you want. If you have no interest in it, you can stand there and run a machine all day, or you can program, or you can do a lot of other things. Like I said, IT or HR or accounting, whatever, the opportunities are all there. And you can do it and find them without spending a lot of years on a lot of money to do it. So I think it's just been a phenomenal ride, and I want to keep going for a while because I got too much life and energy in me. But it's been a very, very good to me.
Very, very good. Well, life and energy you definitely have, and I agree with you in every aspect of that. And I don't want to sit here today and neither of us have. So what I'm about to say we haven't done, but I don't want to sit here and demonize universities and say that it's no good, because it is good, and there's lots of great reasons to go to a university. However, what I do want to say is, those folks who are going into the trades, it's not someone who couldn't hack it at a university. It's not someone who can't do a university type of, and it's not a misfit that just, is a troublemaker and is just falling into a job that's undesirable, because these jobs are desirable. Oftentimes they are more prestigious than a lot of the university degrees that are out there. So that's kind of what I want the audience, and those of us in manufacturing, they already know, right? But we have an audience out there as well who's not in manufacturing, who just hopefully maybe enjoys hearing me tell bad dad jokes. Christian, any of my jokes ever good? He's shaking his head no. He did this yes or no kind of thing, más y menos in Espanol, but what he really meant was no. So anyway, I think some people listen to this show because it can be somewhat entertaining that are outside of manufacturing as well. Those of us in manufacturing know these things to be true, but that's really the awareness that I hope that folks like you and I can create, Jerry, is it's not someone who just grabbed their GED and was trying to get out of school, or graduated with a low GPA and couldn't go to university, or the scumbag, all the tattoos. I'm glad all of these stereotypes are starting to be dropped. Tattooed people are in every industry now, right? Like, I don't have any, but some of my best friends all have tattoos. Christian has 100 of them, I think. Actually, he's probably going to shake his head and say, no, I don't. But regardless, the joke I'm trying to make is all of these stereotypes are being tossed out the window, and there's a great career for anyone. I was just interviewing a guy in Eastern Kentucky. He was the valedictorian of his class, and he went to a trade school instead of a university because he loved working with his hands, and he wanted to launch his own company making something.
There you go. And I'm glad you mentioned what you did earlier, because not only do we not want to vilify education and higher education, because manufacturing needs educated engineers and other people, both structural engineers, mechanical, electrical engineers, and a lot of that takes training. Whether you get it at 2 or 4 year college or a trade school, it depends on the role. So there's still a lot of places for people with college degrees within manufacturing.
Absolutely.
They could still get a quicker and better ROI on the investment they made in college in a very stable environment, that usually with good benefits and all that stuff. And again, being candid about it, another reason why I went that route was because I had a girlfriend at the time, and at 17 years of age, I really didn't want to move to go to Oral Roberts University or any of the others where I was accepted. This looked like, and it turned out to be quite fortuitous that I stuck with manufacturing.
Did you ever go back and thank that 17-year-old girlfriend?
Not very often.
No.
I got an awesome bride of 35 years, and I don't think of that stuff.
But what life would have been had you run off to Oral Roberts or something instead, right?
Yeah,
so
might have been a preacher.
Little gratitude. Might have been like your brother, right?
Yep.
Like your brother. All right, Christian, I actually remember the question that we started this thing out about 20 minutes ago. Do you remember what I asked you to help me remember? He's shaking his head no. What kind of a producer is this guy? Is it easier to head off to manufacturing facilities, or bring technology into the high schools in order to create awareness for those who do not know about manufacturing, or is it a combination of both? I know we're now going way back 20 minutes ago, but I did want to know the answer or your thoughts on the answer to that question.
Okay, perfect. I'm glad you rephrased it that way. My thoughts, because they're not always, gospel, and they're not always valid, but they're my thoughts. And I think it's got to be a combination for a few reasons. And I also believe that anything in life that's worth having or doing is usually not the easiest way, isn't always the best. So I think a combination. And part of the reason is if we can bring people either to a place like the museum to see where it started and where we are today, because our innovation station shows some of the equipment. Yeah, there we're going with some metrology equipment right there.
It's actually, it's you and I right there actually talking about this stuff.
Yeah. So we have things set up in such a way that you can really present them the way you want, just like taking them to a shop floor to let them see how high-tech these shops are today and the manufacturers. But the other piece, in order to get people maybe pique their interest enough for even a school to consider bringing you, we might need to take part of the show, if you will, to them. And I think there are people doing that, where I see Kennametal has a mobile show that they take around to some of the different places. Terry Iverson and Champion Now have this Camp Champ where they bring high school students in to oversee some middle schoolers getting hands on a lathe to make a pen, and then a mill to mill the box for the pen to go in and put it together so they can leave with something done. So I think if we can expose people, especially in a hands-on or at least eyes-on view, it really accentuates what we are talking about and what the opportunities might be, and they can see for themselves, maybe get an idea what might pique their interest. So I think we need to go to the audience in some cases to create the interest, generate the interest, but then we can cement what some of that means by bringing them either on a field trip to a customer, an end user, a manufacturer, or this museum or other places around the country that exist.
Yeah, I just did a wonderful interview in partnership with Starag with the Lindbergh Foundation, and I got to meet Eric Lindbergh, the grandson of the world famous Charles Lindbergh, right? And we went to Lindbergh High School, and it was probably to be fair, and shout out to everyone at the Lindbergh Foundation, but probably the second best high school that I've personally been into that is pushing for STEM and STEAM, which includes the arts as well, right? The first one is in New York. They're actually partnered with the Allendale folks over there with John and Neil, and they have about 300 students in their STEM program, and about 250 of those opted to, on their own time, spend summer school to learn about it as well. At that time, about a year and a half ago when I went, it was the only Gene Haas certified high school in the entire country. They had several machines, like full-on turning centers, milling centers in there for people to work on. Plus they had 5 other areas for, the architecture and the 3D printing and the mathematics and science and everything that was involved in it. And I went to this Lindbergh High School just recently in St. Louis. And they want to spread this across the country. And I asked them how many students participate in their STEM program. They said everyone. Everyone is involved at some point of their high school career to be a part of that STEM program. So everyone's being introduced. They had a 3D printed guitar, which was kind of cool. And so I bring that up because there are a lot of folks, let's say the awareness is starting to come back than it had at least when I was in high school, right? But now we have new issues. So I want to present these issues to you as you're younger than I am, but I'm 45 years old. Certainly a better looking person than I am. But what I want to present, Christian, did you finally turn your microphone on?
My mic was still on from earlier when I thought I was going to talk.
He finally turned it on. I
get a little laugh there.
He's been giving me sign language all day, and now we hear him chuckle.
Christian, I think you need to take that drink away from me.
So, but what I want to present to you is, let's say that we've created awareness. Let's say that we've all done our job shouting to the moon about everything that's going on. All of our friends out there, the new influencers that have stepped up, in my opinion, alongside the associations that work with all these companies, right? And working together. And some of these influencers have zero machining background, but just believe in it. They have come from technical backgrounds of some sort, and they saw a gap that needed to be filled, right? Well, now here's some new issues. What about the flex schedule? Everyone likes a flex schedule these days. Manufacturing don't really have a flex schedule. What about this get-rich-quick scheme of dancing on TikTok? Or, these opportunities that exist with, I would make the discussion, and certainly someone will probably leave a comment here, but I would make the discussion that is a little less effort behind what effort needs to be involved in manufacturing. It's a day-to-day activity. Sometimes you're lifting stuff, you're working cranes, you're programming. Your mind is always a mechanic of some sort with CAD CAM, designing, you're doing quoting, you're doing shipping, you're making sure everything's being shipped on time, you're working with clients. So how do we, once we create this awareness, how do we make it appetizing as well? How do we make it tempting as well?
Hi everybody, Amy Teal, CEO and co-founder of Shop Floor Coffee, proudly a women-owned business that's supporting the manufacturing community.
Mike Franz, CIO, co-founder of Shop Floor Coffee. Thanks everybody for tuning in to check us out. Amy, tell us a little bit about Shop Floor Coffee.
So we're here to give back to the manufacturing community through purchases of coffee. So every purchase you make, we donate a portion of those proceeds back to help workforce development initiatives.
We can't tell you how much it means to us to help support the great manufacturing community. We've been involved with it for like 20 years, and we know there's issues around finding good people, finding people that really want to be involved in the industry, and we want to start by giving back to that, giving back to the programs, getting kids involved with these awesome programs. There's robotics, there's computer software, there's so many cool things involved with the industry that people just aren't aware of. We want to help raise that awareness by giving back in a little way that we can.
And really we came up with the idea of Shop Floor Coffee because there are two complaints on a shop floor. It's the coffee and the toilet paper. We can't do anything about the toilet paper, but we can help you get better tasting coffee on your shop floor while helping the community. So shopfloorcoffee.com, come visit us and support the community.
Yeah, it's an excellent point because a lot of these jobs can't be done remotely in manufacturing, right? And there can be flexibility, and I've seen some manufacturers do it very well. But COVID was a great example of a lot of these businesses were tagged as essential businesses to our country. And to be able to manufacture and make these things to keep the economy going. And are there some things? Yes, you can monitor some machines remotely. There are pallet pools and work cells that you can load up and have automated and all of that. But somebody eventually has to go in and do a changeover, set up a new job, add more material, whatever it happens to be. So there isn't the same kind of flexibility as there is for somebody that can do all of their stuff, whether it's a CRM system or something else that you can work remotely every day of your life. That's not typical for manufacturing, although there are roles where you can work remotely. That will be a challenge because people got used to either a hybrid or totally work from home or work remotely. And while I'm in my RV in New Mexico, I'm getting paid because I'm doing my job on a computer. It's kind of tough to battle that, but I mean, I've also seen people with 3D printers in their apartments or their RV and making parts too. So there are ways that people can work flexibility into the things to an extent, but it's not going to be like it is for just some industries that we know of or some wishes that people have. But I think a lot of that's a dream world too. Wanting to get rich by being an influencer or TikTok or something else. It's like being in the NBA and being a superstar. There are very few that ever get to that level.
So maybe we could almost pitch it as your fallback. Like, go ahead, be a musician, be a NBA superstar, be a TikTok super dancer, but as a fallback, think of manufacturing. So my parents would have told me.
Use manufacturing to pay for the training and the other things you want to do and your exercise and whatnot to be that superstar if you ever get there. But on the way, you've got great benefits and good pay and a substantial opportunity.
That was what you did, right? Because you were going to be a professional musician. Is that correct?
Broadcaster, but I did play in bands for years too.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, I make a joke, and obviously there's truth in it. How about that? I love when that happens. What instrument did you play?
Keyboards. Started taking organ lessons when I was 4. I remember I couldn't reach the pedals from the bench, so I had a chair with a phone book on it back in the day when there was a phone book.
All right, Jerry, we're going to bring this back around to the American Precision Museum because, as you can see, our time on the clock over there is starting to run a little bit short. Not too short, but I do want to play a couple of games at the end of this as well with you. You know, we did cue up some sound. Christian went to all that work to cue up some sounds for us. You know, he really diligently pays attention to this podcast, and we have some rapid fire questions as well. But I want to talk a little bit more about the American Precision Museum because I think it's worthwhile. We have a video coming out for it. We have the availability for anyone around the country who can't make it out to Vermont to see it online, make a donation, support manufacturing, hopefully reach folks outside of manufacturing. I keep looking to my right here because the kids keep popping up. You know, the kids make me smile, folks. Right? So let's talk a little bit about the American Precision Museum as a whole, what it exemplifies, why someone should make the time if they're anywhere near Boston, if they're anywhere near any of the surrounding areas, because you're right on the border there, on the border of Vermont. Where do you think it brings the most value? I can tell people what value it brought me, but I'd like to hear from you about. Let's visit, let's pay attention to it, but also if you can't, hop on YouTube and let's make a donation and support it.
Sure. Right there's an example of one of the very first turret lathes that was ever done. So when you think about what that meant back in the 1800s to be able to have multiple tools and change that quickly. But we are about three major tenets of the museum are preservation. Of course, any museum, you want to preserve and honor and respect the history that's there and what it taught us, but we also want to educate people about what difference that made in the world. And as an innovator, young or a young person of any age can still make a difference. I think there's a lot of displaced and underemployed people in our country too. So we don't want to just reach young people. We want the 40 and 50 and 60 somethings that have any kind of desire to be hands-on or make things to get involved because it's there. The opportunity is there. So after educating people about what can be done and what we're doing and about the museum, our mission, we want to inspire people. And that's where, again, the young people of all ages, but it's proven that if you start exposing people in the earlier years, like 4th, 5th, 6th grade, there's a better chance. It's like kids grow up talking about cowboys and Indians. I want to be a fireman. I want to be a doctor. Who's saying I want to be a 5-axis machine operator? Or who's saying I want to be a 3D printer guy? But now there are those kind of things. If we expose them, that's what those STEM kits are. They show you how the kids, and there's things, everything's included in there, and then it ties in with a little QR code that you scan that shows a video of how that ties into modern today and then what some of the opportunities would be for a career path. So I think we need to lay the groundwork early, build on that, and then make sure that we're providing parents and educators with enough information about what we're really doing to get them interested and understand that, wow, Johnny or Becky doesn't need $200,000 of debt in 4 or 5 years of college. Maybe it's $10,000 or maybe it's nothing, and they can start making $60,000, $70,000 a year after they get out of school. That's a pretty hard argument to beat.
Jerry, you brought something up that I'm happy you did, and it takes me back to another one of the conversations. Firstly, we're convincing the parents at this point instead of just the kids. I think the kids get excited about making things. I mean, they're in robotics classes and stuff. They're having a great time. But you also mentioned something else that was very, very valuable, and that was it's not just about the kids. What about the military veterans that have come home from war that need a place that they can fit in? There's so many veterans right now that need a home, and manufacturing can be that. I heard a stat that if 6% of the women in our country chose manufacturing, the skills gap would be immediately filled. 6%. So we want more women as well. And what about those who have exceptional abilities? Some people say disabilities. I say exceptional abilities. Yes. There's folks out there like Jack Schron from Juergens who invites those people into his facility and gives them good work. There's, you know, I have family members myself who are on the autism spectrum that can focus really well on something but maybe can't do other types of jobs. Manufacturing is a great place for those folks as well. So we are very inclusive in trying to fill this void of people, because you mentioned a 2.4, I believe, by 2030, 2.4 million jobs.
Yep. That's the number between 2.4 and 2.5 that I've heard many, many times.
Yeah.
And Lighthouse for the Blind is another one. I mean, because there are machines that can be operated in ways that they can get them set up. And so people that happen to have a little different setup than the rest of us, there are still plenty of places for them. And I think manufacturing is unique in that way. And everybody probably feels that the field that they're in is unique.
Yeah.
But I think manufacturing, there are no limits either to what you can do, what you can make, how you can make it, and what you want to be. I just think it's incredible. There are manufacturers, there are distributors, there are people that apply the product, people that sell it, people that train on how to use it, install it, service it. I mean, it's a pretty broad spectrum. But again, it's not limited to the young people. But if we don't expose young people to it, how are we going to fill that pipeline? I think what you said about females, women, young women, and older, middle-aged women, whether you take them out to the range, to shoot sporting clays or skeet, they're more likely to listen to some instruction and follow through and do it pretty well. I think there are really good opportunities for the ladies in manufacturing as well.
I did an interview with one young lady who was a cash register clerk at a grocery store. The very next day, she's running a 5-axis Matsura machine. Obviously, she needed some help on day one, but a year later, she's already programming it. There's so much to be said for not being happy in a career and having opportunities in other fields as well. But I have a question to ask you.
Okay.
You got here today on a plane, yeah?
Yes.
Probably Boeing had something to do with that, or Airbus, right?
It was Embraer. Actually.
Yeah.
Regional jet.
But planes were made. I've been to Spirit, and we're the largest tier 1 in the world, aerospace. Christian, you just bought a new Tesla, didn't you? Yeah, shaking his head. Yes, I've been in a Tesla, helped them work on that. Do either of you have a Apple or a Samsung phone? Yeah,
I have a Samsung.
I've been into those
guy.
places. I've helped them work on those things, make those things. This desk right here. I was in woodworking. I helped make desks like this. Everything around us that we participate in is done through manufacturing. Why aren't we giving it more respect?
Yeah.
I mean, you and I are, but the world, why aren't we?
You know how many times when people say, what do you do? And you say cutting tools in the day or machine tools, they say, oh, you must have some cool stuff in your garage. It's like, no, it's not that. It's true. It's everything in here was manufactured, made somehow.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You ready to play some games?
Absolutely.
We're down to a couple of minutes here.
I might need a little more of this other
Oh,
water.
chug it at this point. I mean, don't tell anyone. I mean, it's not being recorded or anything, right, Christian? Christian, you stopped record while you chugged that tequila?
Yeah, we cut.
We cut for that part. Yeah. Hopefully we did it, by the way. Jerry was chugging tequila. But everyone loves you anyway, Jerry. You're world famous. All right, my friend. Do we have a couple of sounds, Christian? I get these wrong all the time, though. So don't feel bad. Yeah, we gotta hold our earmuffs.
Let's see how I did on these.
Yeah, sometimes you give us some real hard ones.
All right, first sound effect. Okay, that's not a sound.
Is that music? Is that the video we're watching right now?
That's the French cafe next door.
Let's see if you can hear this one.
Sounds like a very large punch press.
Does, doesn't it? If it's not bending something, it's punching something.
That's actually spot on, yes.
Yeah, good job, Jerry. 1 for 1. You got another one for us, Christian?
Got one right here.
It must be the tequila that's helping.
If you poured me less than you, I'm behind. So.
Well, I did go through it quickly, didn't I? It makes my ears better.
There's music behind it. But
there is music.
Okay.
That's a small cutter cutting aluminum.
You think so?
An end mill.
It was actually another press, but we'll
a press.
I blame it on the music. That didn't sound like it was pressing anything.
Do you want us to, we'll get
Unless
rid of
that was a hydraulic pump. Yeah, that's.
That didn't sound like a press at all. I heard dun, 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 dun.
Tinkerbell floating behind the press.
Can we fly? Can we go to Neverland?
I have been called a lost boy.
Have you?
Back in the day.
Should we keep chatting, Christian? You got another one for us?
Almost got another one. Here we go.
It's a mad cat. It sounds like a cat hissing.
It's like high pressure coolant or just an air blow.
Like an air blow or a mister or
I'll
something.
go with air
This
blow.
is actually a laser welder.
Ah. Wow, I'm failing miserably. I should have gone with bourbon.
It makes it all better, right? A lot of bourbon folks out there would agree with you, I think.
my son and son-in-law.
Do we have any more, Christian, or are we good for that game?
Let me give you one more.
All right.
Give me a chance for redemption.
Last one.
That's an operator not sure why the machine messed up.
Sounds about right. Or why did it? How did it crash?
What story do I tell the boss?
It wasn't me. Shaggy pops out of nowhere.
Took off.
Yeah, it's funny how those things do exactly what you tell them to do.
Uh-huh.
You ready, buddy?
Yes.
Why do these all sound the same? This sounds like traffic outside.
Today. I did a bad job today.
I picked the game, but I
Well, you nailed the first one, so
Okay.
that was the
All right.
best. That was the best one I gave you. So that's
So editing, delete the rest. No, just kidding. Don't do that. Leave all the fun that was in there as well. But hey, look at you.
look at that with a long sleeve
Did you lose
shirt.
weight?
Doesn't look like it today, but
you lost weight. You're a good-looking man. All right, rapid-fire questions. You ready to close this thing down with a bang?
absolutely.
All right, brother. I'm just gonna throw them at you. You just give an answer.
All right.
Don't think about it.
I'm ready.
Yes, sir. I like that. 3D printing, revolution or overhyped?
Ooh, it's a revolution that is still not the hockey stick as we expected. It's laying down and it's still happening.
Yeah, I agree with that actually. Mass production or bespoke creation?
Bespoke creation.
I like that too. CNC machining, magic or just mechanics?
Ooh. I think there's a lot of mechanics, but boy, it can be magic if done right.
I got the magic in me. All right. Robotics and manufacturing, friends or foes?
Ooh, friends, for sure. We can do things much better, much more reliably, and let the monkeys do what monkeys can do, and people free up for what takes a person and thought.
I like it. Lean manufacturing, essential or overrated?
Unless applied properly, it's overrated. But there are principles of it that really make solid sense and should be implemented.
Coming from a pro. I like it. All right. AI in manufacturing, a blessing or a curse?
Ooh, I think it is a blessing. It can help save a lot of headaches. Yeah, absolutely.
Virtual reality in design, game changer or gimmick?
In design, I think it's a gimmick.
All right. Last one. Quality control, art or science?
Ooh. I think it's science, but it has to have a bit of art, because if you understand how the part's being used, you can decide whether or not a little bit out of tolerance is acceptable or if it absolutely has to be rejected. Used to be one of my main gripes as an apprentice.
It's like you've done this before, my friend. It's like you have experience in this industry. All right, any name drops you'd like to do today? I know you and I had a nice lunch at a French restaurant over here, and I believe you wanted to reach out to someone and just say, you know, this is what we're doing, this is what's coming. And you may want to drop the American Precision Museum website as well, just in case people want to donate.
Yeah, good idea. So we will, the American Precision Museum will have a presence. I'll be there at IMTS. Our executive director, Steve D'Alessio, will also be there for part of the time. Dave Eastman, our director of development and communications, will be there, as well as some of our staff members. We'll have a booth in the Student Summit, and I will be in various places in between the North and South building there near our friends at Gardner, and just walking the show to be available to talk to people. I want to give a shout out to those folks. Also, some huge supporters of ours, Royal Products and Daniel Defense, Gossiger Foundation, AMT. But Lee Morris is our chairman, phenomenal leader of this group, and Steve is the executive director, phenomenal team that we have. I also want to say that Terry Iverson and his Champion Now will be at the Student Summit, and he has done something pretty phenomenal, developed this Camp Champ, which brings these machines in to expose younger people and students to what's happening, but he's also written a couple books, the latest of which is a two-sided book. One side starts from the parent's perspective, and it's for the parents to read and come into the middle. The other, you flip it over 180 degrees, it's for the student, and then they can come together and talk about what they learned and what questions they may have, and along the way there's codes to scan for videos and other things. So there's a lot of people out there like Jeremy Boughton Edge Factor that are trying to make a difference in helping to educate the world about the opportunities that exist. And if you have any doubts, call and talk to me. You can find me through, my email is jerry@americanprecision.org. It's Jerry Rex, actually, at americanprecision.org. Our website is www.americanprecision.org. And if you get a chance to get to Windsor, Vermont, there's a Harpoon Brewery 6 minutes from our place, and it's only from Google that I would know that. And there's King Arthur's Mills and a few other things up there. And if you're a skier, it's not far from Killington, and we're less than 2 hours from Hartford. So,
perfect. What was that restaurant we went to, or at least the area we went to when I came up? Do you remember?
We went near Dartmouth University.
That was such a lovely area.
Right at the corner, that restaurant that we went to. Yeah, the outdoor seating, that was lovely.
It really was.
We're right 10, 15 minutes from Dartmouth. So if you haven't thought of someone going to a really high-end school and you want to swing by the museum, we may be able to change your mind and save you some money.
There's a shout out for Dartmouth. All right, Jerry. Appreciate your time. It's been just about an hour. Cheers to you.
Tony,
cheers
thanks,
to
my
the
man.
day. Absolutely.
Really appreciate you and MTDCNC and the exposure you're providing for the museum.
Thank you so much.
And your friendship.
That's the most important part is
Absolutely.
your friendship. Yes. Thank you all for listening, watching, paying attention. Christian, thank you for what you do as well. If you've joined us today, the same thing I say at the end of every show, but I think it's important to say, time is the one thing we cannot manufacture more of. So if you've spent your time, your precious, precious time with us today, thank you. We cannot get it back, and you've shared some with us. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Gunn Show as much as Jerry and I have enjoyed talking with each other today. So one more time, thank you so much, and we will see you again soon.